Okay, so understanding the end of the war and understanding how the war in the Soviet Union went, we really have to understand how the Soviets made their stand against Germany. Leningrad and especially Stalingrad. Stalingrad is the turning point of the war. The Germans had used their geographic size and their winters again to their advantage to defend their territory, but it was the defense of those cities which literally became rubble. In Stalingrad, the German referred to it Ratsenkrieg or rat warfare because soldiers were literally fighting from blown out house and blown out building, and fighting through rubble and crawling through the mud. And the Soviets refused to give up both of those cities, especially Stalingrad, carrying the name of the leader of the Soviet Union at the time, and became brutal warfare between those countries. The Soviet Union took a policy basically of no surrender, so the casualty rates became very high for the Soviet Union, but also very high for the Germans fighting there. The Soviets lost so many troops that a whole generation of women following the war actually, there's a whole generation of old maids, so to speak, because the population was disproportionate among men and women because so many men had died in the war. But it's not to say that women didn't fight in the war. Actually, it's quite the contrary. The Soviets were so desperate for manpower to throw at the German invading forces that they in fact did draft women and put them in the front lines of World War II. In Stalingrad in particular, many of them served as soldiers and snipers. So women play a pivotal role in the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union had a policy, even though it was an oppressive totalitarian regime, it had a policy of equality of the sexes and used women to fill those ranks. So the Soviets put up this fight, and of course the German invasion had been caught in this terribly brutal Russian winter. Um, that winter was coupled with the fact that the Germans had moved so deep into Soviet territory that when they were cut off from their supplies, they had their summer gear still. They didn't have warm enough clothing. They had a difficult time keeping their machinery running, and there was large casualties as a result, which crippled their ability to continue fighting the Soviets. So after Stalingrad, the Soviets began a slow pushback against the Germans and a slow march toward Germany. So Stalingrad really is a turning point. It was the furthest extent of German invasion into the Soviet Union, and the Soviets start driving them back towards Germany. But I want us to keep in mind, because all too often as people from the United States, as Americans, we tend to think of the American contribution in Europe as being the pivotal event, and certainly the United States' involvement in invasion of France, as we're going to see in D-Day, in their attack against Germany was important, but it's important to keep in mind, to be historically accurate, that for the Allies, which again is the Soviet Union, in Europe, the Soviet Union, Great Britain, the United States, and then eventually liberated France. For the Allies, it really is the Soviet Union that does most of the fighting against Nazi Germany and in the Third Reich. So we're going to pick back up on World War II when I get back, is we're going to look at a couple of the sources and packets that we're going to be looking at. Then we're going to examine the impact of German occupation of territory. So we're going to look at ethnic conflict in particular. We're going to examine really the Holocaust and other groups attacked in those occupied territories, and how Hitler tried to play out his theories of racial superiority in German occupation of other lands through those actions. So we will see you on Tuesday. So have a good 3-day weekend.